Hello, my name is Lucas. This is a bit of lit. Please excuse the whirring. That is my computer, which is currently on. I saw another tag. This one I was not tagged in, but I do tags as I please. And so should you. That said, I tag my mortal enemy, as always, around the weird's very own host who might be a ghost, Mr. Nothing, to do this tag. And anybody else, if you're watching, you should do it too. Okay? If you see a tag, you should do it. That's all there is to it. Doesn't matter if you're tagged or not. But if you need that extra motivation, Mr. Nothing, there it is. This is the reread book tag, the 2020 version by Ross at Scally Dandling. I saw it from Sean the Book Maniac, and he talked about a lot of really interesting books, most of which I have not heard of, but I thought I would add to the conversation, as always. So, number one, let's assume you do reread if you're doing this tag. So where do you sit on the rereading scale from almost never to all the time? Occasionally. I have definitely reread a lot of books this year, namely Mrs. Dalloway, which I made a tag video about already. I've also reread 1984, A Metric Ton of Stephen King, and Pride and Prejudice, and I feel like I've reread other things. Oh, East of Eden, of course, some books by John Steinbeck I've reread. So yeah, I have done quite a bit of rereading this year for sort of comfort reading because of the wildness that is this year. I have been sort of insulated from it because I live, coincidentally, where it started, and it's not really been... It is a struggle, I guess. There are some issues, but in China things are pretty normal. There are just more restrictions and, this kind of thing. But I'm okay with it as long as it means that we can all stay healthy and, we have to wear a mask on public transportation. Okay, no problem. I don't care. That's fine. We have to show a clean bill of health when we want to go to a special kind of place where a lot of people are going. Okay, again, no problem. Number two, has that changed over your reading life, rereading? I would say yes, I've been rereading again a lot more this year, but I have reread books before. I've read Moby Dick every year, and Lord of the Rings every year for quite a while. So the amount of rereading I've done this year has had a significant uptick. So there it is. When do you reread? Maybe immediately after finishing a book, or not till years later, or when the mood strikes? I do some annual reads in specific months of the year. Lord of the Rings is going to come a little early for me. Normally it's an October kind of thing, but September will have to be it. A few books this year I definitely reread just a couple months apart, if not a month apart, for my reading race challenge. And some books I take years to reread, like Pride and Prejudice. I reread, and Mrs. Dalloway, both of those I reread after 6 years. And Mrs. Dalloway I reread twice because it's just incredible. Anyway. Why do you reread books? Partly, if it's an annual read, like Moby Dick or Lord of the Rings, it's because I absolutely love those books. I could read other books, but they're very comforting, and something about them has endless readability for me, so I read them. Other books, like Mrs. Dalloway, and Pride and Prejudice, for example, I see a little insect, it's driving me crazy, but I did not understand them, absolutely did not understand them when I first read them, so I thought I would give them another chance, and man, am I glad I did do that. So, how do you reread? Faster, slower, just the best bits? I reread a lot of Stephen King books much faster because there's, now that I'm not as worried about the plot, I can just focus on all the things that I might need to know for the quizzes for the reading race. And slower, the first time I reread Mrs. Dalloway, I read it slower. And same for Pride and Prejudice and Moby Dick and Lord of the Rings. I read slower. These ones I read slower, even though I've reread Lord of the Rings and Moby Dick multiple times now. Not slower each time, but slower than the first time I read it, so that I can absorb and ponder and think about these books. The second time I reread Mrs. Dalloway, I reread it much faster. Because I had already read it a month or two before, and I already knew, you know what I'm saying? And I don't just read the best bits, that's kind of weird to me. Unless it was like a collection of short stories, then I could understand. Or if I was like looking for something to, trying to remember exactly what a character said in this moment or did, then okay. But then I'm not like rereading bits of my favorite pieces, which is interesting because I will watch clips of my favorite TV shows. If I'm like, wow, that was really, I want to see that again and experience that emotion again, I do this all the time. But I don't do it for books. I don't know why. I guess visually I can just sit there, mouth agape, and look like an idiot. But with reading, I have to think more about it. I don't know, man, but I don't tend to reread the bits, the best bits. Who or what do you reread? More specifically, which authors or genres or individual books? I've already said that a couple times. Annual reads, Lord of the Rings and Moby Dick. Lord of the Rings is just an incredible fantasy. I think because it's not, I know it's not the first fantasy, but I think because it's so monumental in its scope and its design and influence is the word I'm really looking for, that other books that have come after that have done things better, maybe not everything better, but certain things better, maybe more in-depth characters or deeper plots or more complex for this or that reason. It doesn't, it obviously gets the credit it deserves, but it also is discredited as kind of basic in a way. And because, it's very much a story of good and evil, but I think there is plenty of complexity in it, because it's one of the first, so to speak, it doesn't get the justice it deserves in that sense, just because there's been other things that have come out that have done things better or are more interesting in certain aspects. And, I can understand, but I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I don't think that, I don't want to say never, but I don't think there's anything that could replace it in terms of fantasy, just because it's so ingrained into my brain. And fairly short, for a fantasy series. And Moby Dick, it's just, there's this, I forget what the preface is called, where the part where you get the names of the etymology, and I forget the other one, excerpts, I think, of whales, and names for whales, and mentionings of whales throughout time and history and literature, these kind of things. Something about that is completely skippable, much like the chapters about whaling and whale body parts. Completely skippable. But because it gets you away from the drama and the biblical sense of it. However, there is something about the excerpts and the the etymology part that feels sort of haunting to me, in that, you know, this is a creature that has existed for a long time, that is very much symbolizing a lot of different things. You know, be it God or death or what have you. There's always been a name for it throughout history, and there's always been people talking about it, and it's something that even if I didn't know the story of Moby Dick, it's something I would have known my whole life, that kind of thing. Like, it just feels like there's a haunting with that book, and it's sort of a reckoning with all these fears that humanity has, that I think it's just incredible. And then you read the book and you get the drama of it, and you have these wild, larger than life characters in Ahab and the whale himself, of course, and all these musings with Ishmael and Queequeg, and it's just an incredible experience, and I love it so much, so I read it every year. And I will be reading it again this year, and we will be talking about it in November. So, which authors or genres are in? Yeah, okay. Number 7, is there a book that you found better when you reread it? Definitely all the books that I've mentioned. Mrs. Dalloway, Pride and Prejudice, 1984, which I didn't mention before, but maybe I did. 1984, Moby Dick, Lord of the Rings. I got them, and I understood them much better, and I felt the power of them. So those would be my answer. 8, and one that was worse, all the Stephen King books. They are so... What is going on? Don't get me wrong, there's some that I did last month, like Salem's Lot. It's pretty okay. 11/22/63. I didn't have time to make a video on that, but that's a pretty okay book. There are issues I have with it that make me sort of not like it, but pretty okay. And then there's things like It, which are just... Number 9, which one book have you reread most times? It might actually be probably Moby Dick, but before that, and before Lord of the Rings, of course, there was another, and that was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I have read this book so many times in my life. It's a bit of a problem. I love that book so much. When I got to it and when I came to appreciate it, I was having a difficult time in my life. Not the end of the world, but, you know, at the time it sort of felt like it. Looking back, was not great, but I made it through, thankfully, and you know, there were things I could have done to make my life easier that I didn't realize at the time. But anyway, that book is so full of regrets, and talking about regrets and dealing with regrets and all different, and you know, what it means to be a gentleman and these kind of things. And yeah, I really loved that book, and I'm thinking of rereading it this year as well, because I haven't read it in a couple of years, actually. And I've been meaning to get back to it. Yeah, it came to me at a time when I thought I understood regret. I now have other regrets that are much stronger than the regrets I had then. I was quite young, because it's written in the perspective of, you know, Pip, about Pip, and the narrator is an older Pip who is bitter and unhappy and so discontent with the choices he's made in life, the things that he valued in life. And I thought I understood that at the ripe old age of 20 or something. And, you know, not to say you can't have regrets or things that you wish you did different. But now that I'm, what was I, 18? 18, 19, 20, somewhere in there. Now that I'm almost 10 years older than that, I'm just thinking, like, so many other things have happened in my life that are, that I regret more. And those regrets I have, valid, or had, I guess, but also not things I think about anymore. So there's that. Anyway, that was another book that I had reread quite a bit, and I will reread again one day, because it's an excellent book. I think it's Dickens' best book. I haven't read all of them, but I've read, I think, half of his books at least. And, yeah, I'd like to get through all of them and reread that one, and everything will be great, fine, and dandy, and I'm excited, and life is good, and this has gone on long enough. Thank you very much. Please do this tag.